Hey everyone, fascinating discussion today as we dive into the Internet of Things and what is the third wave of tech disruption being led by a company called SI. Nick, how are you?
I'm great, Evan. Very nice to meet you, and hello, everyone who's watching.
Well, great to see you. Summer is here for the UK and Boston here in the Northeast, so really enjoying this time. Um, Before we talk about SI, maybe introduce yourself, the company, the mission, the vision. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so SI is a privately held company. We're based in the UK, although we are global. We have customers all the way around the world. We do some of the biggest companies in the world, like Amazon's IoT. We
Mm,
do Shell's IoT, BP's
well,
IoT, Coca-Cola's vending machines, Mars vending machines. And we basically deliver the elevator pitch, if you like, is, and we can go into how we do it. We deliver 100% connectivity globally. And so we basically compete on the basis that we actually get you to 99% plus connectivity from a single product SKU in a device. And that's why we've won these really big accounts and how increasingly we're working with operators. But we can go into that a bit later on.
fantastic. So let's set the scene. I mean, IoT has been around
Yeah.
longer than Wi-Fi, longer than most wireless technologies, and yet it's really coming into force now. Why has it taken so long to finally take off?
Yeah, you're right. It has. I mean, I've been in the industry a while. It's not my first rodeo. And I remember I was at Cisco for 13 years and ended up as part of the exec team. And I remember in 2011, we confidently predicted there'd be 50 billion things connected by 2020, and never thinking that I'd be able to comment post 2020 and look back and see how accurate that was. And we actually got to 11 billion as an industry. And so, even before it was called IoT, it was called M2M, and you could argue before that it was called SCADA. And we only got to 20% of predictions, and that therein lies the rub, in that we kind of assumed that it would be easy. And I think we had a mental model. I know we had a mental model in our mind that says, well, we can do it on a phone. I mean, I can take my phone, remember 2007, the iPhone, I can take my phone
Mhm.
abroad and it roams, it works, right? So isn't it, it's just a device with a circuit and software. And we thought IoT would be the same. And of course it isn't. And and then what we found is that, it's actually, there's roaming agreements, but only some roaming agreements. I mean, in general, the average connectivity is 85% globally. And what that means is that if you want to create a single product, manufacture it once, and just send it around the world and have it connect, what we call ubiquitous connectivity, you're going to get 85% on average. And what that means is that, let's say you're doing a healthcare use case or whatever, you got 15% of cases where you're not having connectivity, and then roaming agreements break. And so we've missed, as an industry, we've completely missed expectations. We totally underestimated the complexity. We basically, my analogy is we sold, parts, like selling parts of a car, and assumed the customers would assemble the car themselves. And actually, at the heart of my company, and the founders who started it before I joined, the brilliance of it was that they designed something which said that will never work. You cannot glue proprietary systems together and get 100% connectivity. So they said, we have to build a different model, and that was the genesis of SI. By the way, Evan, interestingly enough, these guys, the founders, they created Zigbee. So we all know
Oh,
Zigbee.
wow.
It's in your remote control, about 5 billion
Mm.
devices. But that is ubiquitous connectivity. Your TV remote, should you ever decide to travel with it around the world, if you ever wanted to do that, it would work on every TV. Zigbee is ubiquitous connectivity from a chip on a board inside a device. So they basically said, why don't we reinvent cellular and design a cellular solution that works like Zigbee? And essentially, that's what we do. We sell 99% plus global connectivity. 192 countries in the world. It's quite a challenge, and that's why we've won those big brands that I mentioned.
Fantastic. You've also called this period we're in the third wave of tech
Yeah.
disruption. What does that mean exactly? in simpler terms for business leaders, tech leaders, what's so
Yeah,
unique about the present time?
you know, I have been in the industry for 40 years, and I think you can learn a lot from what's happened because there's really nothing new. So I'll talk about the first and the second waves of disruption, and I'll do it from my own perspective because I was there. I remember when I first joined Cisco. It was just around the time when voice over IP was coming in as a new technology to replace circuit switch. And what people forget when they look back is a lot of people were really skeptical. No, it's just
Mm,
tech. It's not going to, I'm going to carry on selling circuit switch. But we all know what happened. The guys who adopted packet switching leapfrogged and got the market, took the early lead, and the pecking order changed. And so disruption is difficult because you have to do change management, and it's threatening. It threatens your economic model. We call that the first wave of disruption for telecom. The second wave, just before I left Cisco, was cloud. I ended up for Cisco running the cloud program globally, and it was all about the fact that that the service providers at the time, they all had hosted data center businesses. So a large part of their business wasn't just selling data, voice, video into consumer handsets and things like that, but they were hosting enterprises applications on data centers. That was a big part
mm,
of the business for most telcos. Well, of course, AWS came along, where for $10 a week on your own personal credit card, you had access to huge compute and all the developer tools. That business just collapsed and it was hollowed out, and they all had to scramble and do it. And so the question then becomes, okay, technology enabled disruption, what's happening now? And I believe many people do that we're now actually seeing the third wave of disruption in telecom, which is, as always, these disruptions are enabled by a new standard and better interoperability. In the case of IoT, it's the eSIM, which
mm.
breaks the 40-year proprietary lock of the telecom IMSI into the SIM. So you can now have multiple operators in the SIM. It's the EUICC standard, which makes it an official standard, so everyone can interoperate. And then there's this new capability called SGP32, without getting too technical about it, but basically gives control to the user. And the user can say, you, the operator, used to control the switch, chose the roaming agreements, your way or the highway, but I press the button, I'm actually going to go to somewhere else. So all of that is disruption. And with disruption comes opportunity. And what we're seeing right now, I believe, is a same thing, is that a number of operators are now seeing this as an opportunity for them to become global. And a bunch of operators are sitting and watching it, wondering, is this going to affect them? But I absolutely believe disruption is underway, and this is an opportunity, which is one of the reasons why we aren't just selling to large enterprises. We are now the platform for AT&T globally. That was a big announcement we
Mm.
did in
Wow.
Barcelona. So AT&T have 135 million devices. So we have become the platform for AT&T, the white label platform. We are doing the platform for TELUS in Canada, and we are doing the platform for MTN across 18 countries in Africa. So we are working with operators to enable them to take advantage of this disruption so they can become global with a SaaS solution, as opposed to building it themselves, which is their DNA.
Mm.
But all their money's going into 5G. So they don't have any money to build it themselves. They don't have the time because this disruption comes at you really quickly. So yeah, we're still doing direct big enterprises, giving you some brands. But now most of our activity is white labeling, like AT&T, and we expect more to follow. We're helping the operators manage the disruption, so that they can launch a new service as an off-balance sheet pay-as-you-use service very rapidly to take advantage of the next wave of disruption, which is a huge opportunity for people.
Yeah, what a time.
Mm,
And you mentioned those amazing brands, those big enterprises.
yeah.
How are they using connected devices and data today compared to just 5 years ago, for example? What's changed?
Yeah, I think the single biggest thing that's changed is that they're producing single product SKUs. So
Mm,
I think one of the misunderstandings about IoT is that the ROI is at the front end, i.e. the device. You can get data out of the device and therefore you will get more marketing data, or you'll sell more devices. Actually, I don't think that is the ROI for IoT. The ROI for IoT is the ability to make a single product in a single factory with ubiquitous connectivity inside it and deploy it anywhere in the world, and it
mm,
just works. So to give you specific examples, we do all of Shell's EV chargers, right?
mm,
And Shell make them in Vietnam, and they make them once as a sealed device. It's not an open device where you insert SIMs when it gets to the country. Make it once, ship it around the world, turn it on, and it works. The ROI for only having one line of EV chargers, for having simpler manufacturing, simpler supply chain, simpler installation, simpler maintenance, one portal, one set of APIs, it is 100, if not 500 times more return on investment than the cost of the connectivity. Because remember, data is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. When I joined SI 7 years ago, the cost of a gigabyte of data was about $11. The market price for a gigabyte of IoT data now is about $1.60, right? So
mm,
that's about a 25% decline per year. So the money's not in the data anymore. The ROI is that can you save money at your back end costs by manufacturing single SKU. So we do Amazon automatic door openers for all the Amazon Prime trucks around the
mm,
world. It's a single a device that you can put inside the buzzer of an apartment block where you get entry that will work, and they can put it in any door in the world. I
wow.
do it in my own podcast called IoT Leaders, and there's one of the episodes is Amazon. They talk about owning every door in the world. Amazon don't do small projects, so that the prime driver can gain secure access, and other companies like FedEx, UPS, or whatever can use it, because you don't want two devices or three devices in your door. So the answer
Mm,
to the question is, people are now making single global product SKUs, which will work anywhere in the world. Now, in order to do that, you have to have a different model to the classic MVNO model, because it cannot do that. The standard MNO model was not built to do ubiquitous global connectivity, and so that's really the heart of why we're different.
fantastic. So you solved the interoperability challenge and you're leveraging all this new technology like eSIM. The other barriers traditionally have been security, terrible device security, questions around cloud security, privacy concerns.
Yeah.
How are you addressing those concerns?
So maybe I'll answer that linking to the previous question. So one of the differences, our architecture is basically it's kind of similar to the Star Alliance in the airline industry, in that we have a ring architecture, not a hub and spoke. And we have 25 operators that we can localize the connection OTA. So we can actually either roam onto those 25 operators and all of their roaming agreements. So that makes 900 networks. Or we can localize the connection OTA. So we can switch a device from AT&T to Verizon in the US, and localize, not just roam. And that's really important, especially for 5G that gets going. Now, on security, everything is encrypted and through a private APN. And I mentioned SGP32 earlier. Some of your listeners, viewers will be very familiar with that, but the idea of switching the operator yourself, like your Kindle does or your Apple Watch does. The problem is, take one example, is, but how do you switch the APN? I mean, the APN is different by operator. If it's fixed IP addresses, the IP address is different. So what we use is a private APN and fully encrypted data. We don't store any data. It's all data in motion, data at rest. And we use a public-private key encryption at the device level to make sure that you've got auditability, traceability, and proof of provenance of the data, i.e. it's not been intercepted from the device to your cloud portal. So security and trust is becoming a really big part of this, and using the public internet to access to get your data. It's very hard to actually get that trust component. So that's why we have our own private software-defined network with 20 data centers, and we use encrypted APNs across 25 operators. It's like the Star Alliance. Buy an airline ticket from United.com. You can fly on 34 airlines, still get United points, use United lounges, and pay once to United, but you can fly on 34 airlines. That
Wow.
business model, which we are now used to, but used to be revolutionary, that business model is what we've built, if you like, for IoT. So AT&T now have a global solution called AT's Global SIM Advanced, they call it. You can buy a global solution from AT&T, and it will work across 25 operators all the way around the world, either roaming or localization. But it's all sold to you by AT&T. That's the first time they've ever been able to do that, because for their entire history, all AT&T have been able to do is sell you AT&T connectivity and roaming where they have it. So it's a new model based on collaboration between operators, like the Star Alliance, which is a proven business model. And there's multiple, like Visa in financial services. It's similar. You have to be abstracted and be agnostic and virtualize your switch in the cloud to provide ubiquitous global connectivity. That's a lot of big words, but essentially what it means is that you have to enable an operator to actually sell competitors connectivity through their brand. And the IoT industry and the traditional legacy platforms like Cisco Jasper that I'm very familiar with, or Ericsson's platform, they were never built to do that. They don't do what's called eSIM orchestration. So this is the disruptive effect, is that a few operators, I mentioned 3, have made the move, and they've said, I want to be a global leader like TELUS. TELUS aren't even the biggest operator in Canada, right? They're the second biggest. But TELUS can sell a single eSIM and connect a device in 192 countries. And they do that with a software platform. So they've made the leap to the new world. And I think this is the disruption that's going to be played out over the next few years. It's great for customers because you get the single product SKU and you get the ROI and you get the connectivity. You don't have to worry about it. It's just ubiquitous. It just works, as we describe it.
No, that's fantastic, and it's a missing piece of the puzzle. However, I would say, the telcos, carriers, we love them, but they traditionally haven't necessarily been, like a consultative sort of solution architecture led sale. So if you're an enterprise CEO, CIO starting an IoT journey, maybe of a hospital network or
Yeah,
fleet, or who knows the business, how do you advise them to execute on an IoT strategy,
yeah,
transformation strategy? What's the first step that you've seen, leading to success, and how can they be successful in
yeah.
leveraging this technology from the telco?
Yeah, from the telco. Yeah, that was the important bit at the end, because we still sell direct, but
Hmm.
increasingly we're becoming the Jasper of the
Hmm.
operators. In the deal with let's take AT&T. In the deal with AT&T, we work alongside them and empower them. So every prospect that AT&T get, they introduce us to the prospect, and the reason they do that is because of what you just said. This is not what they're used to. I mean, they're
Mm,
used to SIMs and data, and they're really good at it. 135 million connections, SIMs and data. Now you start talking about a solution, you're talking about architecture
mm,
design, you're talking about firmware optimization in the device, which no one's ever had to think about. You're talking about project management and implementation. So we augment. One of our services isn't just the SaaS platform, but is the empowerment, channel empowerment,
mm,
augmenting the operator to lead them through, to teach them how to fish. So
mm,
eventually we're not needed. Um, I always like, to say there's nothing new. At Cisco, when I left 2017, it was a $50 billion company, I think. But, they did 80% indirect and 20% direct. But a large part of Cisco's channel business, the 80%, was empowering the channel to actually give solutions and value so they could move up the stack. And when you look at 5G and the almost $1 billion that the networks are now spending on implementing 5G stacks, one of the reasons they're doing 5G is not because it's just another G. It's, somebody said to me the other day, it's because, and it's not just because of speed. 5G, the way it's architected, and 5G SA, the standalone, it gives them an opportunity to move up the stack of value-added services, network slicing, QoS, latency, but also a lot more than that. You can actually do device management as a service. There's a battery management, multi-RAT. The operators all want to be able to move up the stack because the data price is going down. And so we're working with them to help them to be a solution seller so they can increase their ARPU, because they have to, because of the data price decline. So it isn't just a SaaS, buy our SaaS and good luck. We are involved in every single AT&T sale. We're involved in all the TELUS sales. We're on with MTN. I mean, there's 18 different opcos across Africa in MTN, so it's kind of like 18 service providers. So you have to be a solutions company in the first place. It's not just a MVNO that does multi-IMSI. So there is change management, and that's the most difficult part, which is why it will take multi-years for this to roll out. But the direction, I don't think, is in doubt. The direction is we are betting on the MNOs, who today do 85% of all connections globally. And we just need to enable them to do this. When there are some companies who believe the MNOs won't make this transition, we think, no, they will, because they have the assets, they have the pipes, they have the brand, but they just need some help. And so it's not just software, it's also empowering them to do solution selling.
Brilliant. And so, oftentimes large enterprises are the leaders. Do you think smaller companies, SMEs or startups, can take advantage of IoT, or is this more of a big enterprise play?
No, it's not a big enterprise thing. And in fact, I mean, we have 800 customers
Oh, wow.
as SI, of which, for instance, AT&T is one. But we were a direct-only company for about 14 years. The advantage that small companies have is they can move quickly. Large companies are like, the ocean liner. It takes a long time for them. Small companies are like the speedboat. And the question is, the problem with IoT, the adoption, we promised 50 billion, we got to 11 billion. It was because of the complexity, the proprietary components. You had to build it yourself. If you can package it in a way that's frictionless and easy to absorb, and you switch it on, then small companies can absolutely take advantage of it. Let me give you an example. Fixed wireless access. Most small companies have a router, as you call it, over there. Having lived and worked in the US, I'll use that language. They have a router, but that router connects to the service provider. But the service provider can't do 100% domestic coverage. Like in the US, AT&T doesn't have an IoT roaming agreement with either Verizon or T-Mobile. So it's not even national coverage, right? Never mind global. The federation approach, which is how we describe our model, solves that. But if you could take it, and it's enabled by the SIM, the tiny little eSIM, 4 millimeters by 4 millimeters chip that's on the board. If you put the SIM in the router, and the SIM then connects to the cloud platform, the router becomes 100% connectivity device that doesn't need an Ethernet cable in. It's a standalone device that gives 100% wireless access. And that's a huge opportunity for SMBs. And the same concept is, if you put the SIM in a device, it could be a tracker, it could be a medical device, something you wear around your neck, it could be a watch. We do Google Watch in Canada. If you put the SIM in the device on the board, so you have to delay a bit. It doesn't just plug a plastic SIM in. So you have to put the SIM in the device, and we help optimize the firmware because we're also a hardware company. But once you've got that, then actually you can get products to market really quick and sell them globally. And the people who tend to take advantage of that are the smaller companies. Typically, that's what happens. It's the smaller companies who get to market quickly with a new innovative solution that puts pressure on the big companies to react, as we were saying earlier about the operators. So I think for SMBs, solutions like fixed wireless or the ability to create a new product with 100% connectivity, and if you're a US company, say, well, I won't just sell it in the US, but I'll sell it in Mexico, maybe LATAM, I'll sell it in Canada, and I'll sign up a distributor in Europe, in Asia. And I just know that I don't have to worry about who it's going to connect to. It's kind of the Zigbee thing, right? It's just, we sell, our SLA, service level agreement, is 99% plus connectivity. And that's hard to do behind the scenes. But if you can do it, because you architected the solution, at least in our case, the way we have, then people say, okay, great, I can concentrate on my business because now I've got IoT the way I've always wanted it, which is how Amazon, talk about it. My customers talk about it on my podcast, is that I actually now can, one last example, if I can. We do, Coca-Cola have a brand called Costa, which is a big coffee chain. It's particularly strong in Europe, and
Oh yeah.
we're in Australia. We do all the coffee machines for Coca-Cola. So you think about it, you got there's a Costa and I think Starbucks, right? Costa coffee machines are in garages and convenience stores all around Europe and Asia, Middle East. Starbucks are the big 800-pound gorilla. It takes Starbucks about 3 months, if they want to enter into a new country, to find a site, build the store, train the staff, fit it out, start selling the first cup of coffee. And then when you walk into the store, they ask you what your name is. You say, Evan. They write it with a Sharpie on the side of a cup, and you walk out. At that point, they haven't a clue who you are, because you paid. If you paid with a credit card, they don't get the personal data from the finance company. Costa have one product SKU, which contains our technology. They can put that product SKU in a BP garage, say in Vietnam. I use Vietnam again. They can put it in the BP garage in Vietnam, turn it on, and the same day it connects.
Wow.
It connects the same day. So they have business agility. The garage pays for the electricity. The garage has to put the milk in. The garage has to top up the coffee, and then the garage just has to send money to Costa. If the Vietnamese market doesn't like Costa coffee, they switch the machine off and take it out. It's 1 square meter footprint. And because you scan your QR code, you're getting loyalty points, but what they're getting is your identity. So they know your coffee buying habits, so they can send you messages saying, Evan, it's 11 o'clock, you haven't had your Frappuccino yet, or whatever it is. So the benefits of single product SKU, business agility, make it once, deploy it anywhere, are very significant. They see it as almost like a Starbucks killer, because it take a long time. But that's why Coca-Cola bought them. And so they are deploying coffee machines all over the world. There's a big one in Atlanta Airport, directly opposite of Starbucks, because people are in the line at Starbucks. It's taking a long time. They're rushing for the flight. The other side of the corridor is the big coffee Costa machine. It's called a barista bot. But the point is, this is a new business model, and it enables the enterprises to compete with other enterprises. And it's because they can get to market quickly, manufacture it once, deploy it quickly, and get the data. And so we see a ton of use cases like this, but at the heart of it is eSIM, EUICC, and the ability to create single global product SKU, which is what we promised in 2011, but we never delivered.
Wow, incredible. So you're so far ahead of the curve here, I almost dare not ask where you see IoT going next, because you're sort of living in the future. I mean, how do you stay ahead of the curve here as things will keep evolving inevitably?
Well, first of all, I think we're doing a few great things, but we're not doing everything great. Let me just pour a bit of cold water on that. Although the brands that I said, we're only a small company. The brands that I said do give a credibility to the the story. In terms of where it goes next, I think that there's what we've done so far as an industry is that we've now seen the dawn of operator agnostic connectivity. I want to, like Star Alliance, I want to fly on any airline. So there's a thing in the middle. It's a tech company actually called Star Alliance. It's a tech company and a brand. So we're trying to be the Star Alliance of the global MNOs. And we still sell direct. Now, cellular is only 13%. We all get obsessed about cellular. It's only 13% of all connections. So satellite, as an example, in rural areas where there aren't towers, satellite is going to be the dominant model. And there's a lot happening in satellite. The Costa coffee machines will say, if they're in a BP garage, if Wi-Fi is available, then use that. If not, use cellular. So now, what you actually want is the devices to be multi-RAT agnostic. If the device was operator agnostic and provider of multi-RAT agnostic and had the intelligence to sense it, so only switch to another RAT, radio access type, if signal strength is this and latency is that, then what you get is the device chooses the connectivity. Historically, we started off with the industry, the operator chose the connectivity because they control the switch. So I'm an operator, you connect to my network with the SIM that's in your device, and it's either my network or my roaming agreements. And then the MVNOs came out and said, well, we'll sit above that. We control the switch, which maybe for 2 or 3 operators. What's actually happening now is that you get operator agnosticity, which is a real word, and you get RAT, radio access type choices. So the intelligence, like it did in client server, I mean, we always say it's new. It's not new, really. Client server, you had the logic and the data in the 3-tier or 5-tier server model, but there was intelligence in the device. So we believe that ultimately the device is going to choose the connectivity. So in 5G, if you want a certain level of quality service and a certain level of network slicing, the device has to say, this is what I need for the use case. And the cloud platform has to say, I'll only switch you to another provider who can provide those levels of service. So that's from the device in, or the edge in, if you like. The historical model is from the providers out. So where we see it going is, in order to get massive IoT, people have been talking about that, 500 million devices, tiny sensors. Satellite's a great example. You tiny sensors that run off a couple of AA batteries. I mean, 10 years off a couple of AA batteries. It's amazing what people are talking about. You can print a battery. You can print a battery and put it on something and stick it in a field. In order to get massive IoT, hundreds of billions of devices, you've got to take these barriers away, like operator agnosticity. You've got to take all the proprietary stacks out, and you will need RAT. If cellular, then use it. If the price is okay, if not, use LoRa. If not, use cellular, but only if this. So the logic moves to the edge. We talk about 80% of applications and data are going to the edge. IoT is a great example. The logic goes to the edge, and the edge drives the center, drives the switching. And that's how you get 500 billion things. But you'll only get that sort of adoption if the enterprises say, I make one and deploy everywhere. And you can see it in car companies. Car companies want to make, all the car companies, the width of all the cars are the same because they make one frame and all the models just put a different top part. It's different, right? Common manufacturing, common components, global distribution. These are the economics of growth in manufacturing, and they need to be applied to IoT. And if you can create global single SKU and then bring the price down and the logic down to software in the microcontroller, actually, in the device, so in the processor of the device, if you can put the switch in there and keep the price down. So for instance, it can select satellite if it's a little sensor in a wheat field in Ohio, then you can actually get massive IoT, which is what we really want, as opposed to what we got right now, which is partial IoT. I think the latest data is 18 billion IoT devices from end of last year. It sounds a lot, but it isn't compared to the potential that's out there. And so you've got to get frictionless, open, interoperable capabilities to get the inflection point of adoption.
Wow, it's quite a mic drop moment. So I think on that note, we have some food for thought, but really amazing and interesting work. Congratulations and onwards and upwards with the third wave.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Nick.
Thanks, Evan. Good to talk to you.
Likewise. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening and watching, everyone.